if you have a local website and you want to go national, changing the branding is actually a pretty good decision. So you don't necessarily have to completely change it, but at least make it look different enough to where if your national site starts to compete with your local site, Google's not going to get confused with like which business is what. Like keep them in separate lanes entirely. Once you launch a nationwide site, you're going to get some traction in a couple of like seemingly random states. And they may not be in the ones that you want to focus on first. But if you don't get the target states you're looking for, that just lets you know as the business owner or as the SEO person that you need to focus a little bit more on the ones that you want to rank well in.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing Podcast by Carrot.com, where we help you dial in your online marketing so you can build a business of freedom and impact. I'm really excited to have a friend on the podcast with me today, a returning guest, Mr. Bryan Sekine. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm glad to be here. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm good myself. I'm really glad to hear, man. We are talking about national SEO today. Bryan's a treat to talk to because he was actually on the Carrot team for a while and now runs his own SEO agency, which we'll talk a little bit later in the podcast. But he's helping investors scale in local markets and nationally. So what I want to do today is talk about what does it take to rank nationally. So if you're an investor, maybe you're just in a little market or even a large market like Dallas, and you want to start a national brand, you want to start getting leads all over the nation, to wholesale, flip, whatever, what is it going to take? So the goal of this conversation, we're going to set some expectations for you, talk about common mistakes. What do people do wrong? What's the strategy going to look like? And what types of content do you need to create? That sort of thing. So yeah, this is good. I don't think we've ever done one specific episode on the podcast about this before. So I'm excited, man. It's going to be good.
Yeah, me too.
So the thing I'm most curious about, we talked about this a little bit before we hit record, so I kind of spoiled it for myself, but let's give people expectations. How hard is it to rank nationally for terms like sell my house fast or real estate investing terms versus just going hyper local?
So if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have said national would have been significantly harder. But the reality is, after working with several different clients who have started local and then created a new site to go national, I actually think it may be a little bit easier to compete on the national level than on the local level. And the reason why I say that is because there's a huge component of local SEO that people that are focusing on the local level have to sort of compete for, like generating reviews and having a Google business profile with an actual physical address on it. Even some investors just getting that profile verified with Google has been a struggle recently.
It's a headache, man.
Yeah. And so on a national level, you just don't have to worry about that. The local SEO component doesn't play as big of a factor. You could still do local SEO, but only if it's like in the state that you live in or the city you live in. And it's probably not going to have a huge impact on the other states and cities that you're targeting. But the big thing that I think has changed is that I don't recommend taking your local real estate website and then expanding it to be nationwide. So, and the reason why is because I have a couple of clients right now who are doing something similar, where they're doing really well, just crushing it in their local city and their local markets, and they expand into another state. And it works well if the state is adjacent to their primary market. But if they start well and are doing well at a local level and they pick like a state on the other side of the country, you're not going to get nearly as much traction in that state that's further away because you have less like local relevant signals for states that are further away, if that makes sense. Like you have a pre-established presence in your local market, and Google sort of acknowledges that and keeps you kind of cornered in that market. And so it may actually be more difficult to expand to nationwide if you're performing well with that website in a local market. But instead, you could make a new website and start targeting national from the get-go. So as soon as you publish the new Carrot site, which I think you guys still get 3 sites per subscription, right? You basically start and you create all 50 state pages and then create at least 5 city pages within that state and internally link the city pages to the state page. And then all 50 state pages are linked from the home page. And so from there, you're already painting a really clear picture to Google that you are targeting a nationwide audience and that you do business in at least like the continental 48 states, right? Maybe not Alaska,
Right.
Hawaii, or like Puerto Rico or something like that. But at least the primary 48 states, and then you build the city pages there. And so from that point, you basically build out a couple of online citations, not really local directories per se, but online citations. And then you also build out some backlinks just towards the homepage. And then
Mm.
from there, kind of see which states are picking up traction, because you'll probably get a lot of keyword rankings fairly quickly. And they're the same keywords. It's still sell my house fast, we buy houses, cash home buyers. Um, and you can still target a couple of the like near me keywords, but those are going to be less likely to rank well on a national level than on a local level. So I'd
Mm.
recommend choosing keywords at first that specifically mention the state and the city. And then what you'll find is that a lot of those keyword rankings will start performing well, but you're not going to like jump onto the first page in the first couple of months, right? It may feel
Yeah.
easier to get on to get some higher rankings, like maybe on page 2 or page 1. But then once the initial launch happens, you've built a couple of backlinks, you may have to do some tweaking for the city pages or the state pages, build some additional backlinks towards those pages, and or maybe even build out additional city pages within that state if you're not getting a good enough like traction in that area. But generally
Okay.
speaking, once you launch a nationwide site, you're going to get some traction in a couple of like seemingly random states, and they may not be in the ones that
Mm.
you want to focus on first. But if you don't get the target states you're looking for, that just lets you know as the business owner and or as the SEO person that you need to focus a little bit more on the ones that you want to rank well in. And there's a
Yeah.
couple of different ways to do that. But
So kind of what I'm picking up is for most people, it's going to make sense to start a national website, unless maybe you have let's say a website based out of Dallas or whatever market that has a lot of SEO juice go into it, or a lot of backlinks go into it. Then maybe you could try and go national. Is that kind of the sentiment here? It'd be easier to start from scratch, a nationally branded website.
yeah, yeah. Even if you have a website that's doing really well locally, what I would recommend instead is linking from your one website that's doing well locally to your national website. So
Yeah.
that way you're kind of like creating a partnership of two different assets online. And so that way there's no confusion about your local market suddenly trying to compete. Like if you're, using the Dallas example, if you're doing really well in Texas and you're suddenly trying to rank in like upstate New York or in Maine, like it's so far away, Google's not going to think that you're suddenly a local expert in a state that's across the country, so
Yeah.
it may be better to just launch a new website, target nationwide from the get-go, and then link from your already really authoritative website to the new nationwide site.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Your first backlink is one of your own websites. That's the
Yeah,
thing most people forget about, and friends with websites.
right.
Okay, so we talked about how hard is it? We talked about page structure. Appreciate you breaking that down. What are some of the common mistakes you see if somebody, let's say an investor already with their local website and they're like, I'm going to go national, and they just start going to town, creating content, creating pages. What are they doing wrong?
So I think the biggest mistake I see people do is that they try to create Google business profiles for each state.
Mm.
So they'll think, okay, well, that was a pretty key, like pivotal part of my local website. So surely that needs to scale up too. And that is an option that you can do. It does work, but it's incredibly time intensive, labor intensive. It's extremely expensive. And then for most people, just getting one Google business profile that's been like verified, has more than 15 reviews, you have your products, your questions and answers, all your hours and everything like perfectly optimized. That takes some time and it takes a
Hmm.
little bit of upkeep. So imagine trying to multiply that by 50, or 48 even. It's a lot. And so you can end up getting on this hamster wheel of trying to do
Yeah.
local SEO on a national site, and you still won't hit the same kind of goalpost as you would if you just didn't do the Google Business Profile at
Interesting.
all. So
I,
anything
I
that
would
has,
imagine like Google's going to catch on too. Is like it's the same name duplicated. Maybe a franchise. So like Brady buys houses Roseburg, Brady buys houses Seattle, Brady buys houses
right,
Dallas.
right.
But I don't know. Google still might be like, oh, there's something off here. They're not the true local expert.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. Like that's the only exception to that rule is that if you have like an honest franchise, then it
Mhm.
does make sense to create a
Mm.
local Google business profile for it. Think of it like Starbucks or an Apple store. right? Like those companies have physical locations, they have a already established name, but they have a dedicated phone number for that location. And if you have those things, then you can make a Google business profile in that state. It wouldn't hurt you per se, but just getting those three things for 48 states is a lot of like logistics that you
Yep.
just don't need to hit, especially if you're starting out, So, but a franchise, it makes sense to do that, but that's a totally separate like operation at that point.
Right. So that's a good main takeaway is like number one, you don't really need to. It's not going to move the needle. And number two, even if you wanted to try and go all out and do 50 and optimize them, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. Like nobody, like I said, it's hard enough getting one Google My Business or Google Business page like verified. The stupid video you got to send like all the different
Yeah.
steps,
Yeah.
and then you're still competing with people on a local level for
Right.
Google Business at least that are like getting consistent reviews, probably doing posts and updates and are just really pouring into their one Google Business listing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of like that graphic that I first saw in the book, The One Thing, where it has like
Mm.
two circles and they has equal amounts of lines. One line is pointed in 8 directions on one circle and only in one direction on the other. But like
Yeah.
the same distance, the same resources you pour into it, it's only going to get you so far. Versus if you pour everything into one, it's going to get you way further. So
Yeah.
yes, the same exact philosophy applies to doing local SEO versus national SEO. If you try pouring too much in that local SEO bucket, it's not going to get you very far. But
Interesting, man. Huh. Any other mistakes pop up for you? Maybe along the lines of content creation or things like that?
yeah, I would say if you have a local website and you want to go national, changing the branding is actually a pretty good decision. So you don't necessarily have to completely change it, but at least make it look different enough to where if your national site starts to compete with your local site, Google's not going to get confused with like which business is what.
Mm.
Like keep them in separate lanes
Yeah.
entirely. That would be one mistake that I'd recommend not running into. Don't
Yeah.
take your local brand and just make a new website with it because you're going to get some confusion along the lines. It may not happen immediately, but at some point, your national website is going to compete with your local website, and then it's going to get really confusing for your visitors as well as for Google.
Yeah.
So
Name,
that's
address, phone number, man. It's gotta be
right,
separate.
right.
Hmm.
And then the other one is just like I guess trying to build backlinks. Like a lot of people think, okay, I need to build a ton of backlinks to city pages or to state pages. And if you have your site structure set up well from the beginning, like you have your homepage, then you have all your state pages, and below that, you have all your city pages. When you get a backlink to your homepage, that's going to trickle down the equity of that backlink to all of the other pages if it's linked appropriately.
Mm.
Um, if it's not, like if you take, let's say, every city page and every state page and it links to every other state and every other city, then you're messing up your whole site structure. It's a big mess. Google doesn't know what to make of it. So you can think of it like you want to have a plate where all the pieces of food are separate, right?
Mm.
Instead of a big plate of spaghetti where every city and state is just a noodle tangled all over itself. Because
Yeah.
Google is not going to take a lot of time to try to untangle that mess. They're just going to say,
Mm.
okay, we're going to pick like 2 or 3 and you get what you get. Versus if everything
Interesting.
is like separated by state, then it works well. So if you have like an Arizona page and then you click on the Phoenix city, the Phoenix city links to other Arizona cities and back to the Arizona page, but the Phoenix city does not link to the Dallas page because those are 2 different cities and 2 different states entirely. And so
Right. Okay.
you kind of have to create these like silos where it's just
Yeah.
the cities within that state. And then all the state pages link back to the homepage, and the homepage is your national like targeted keyword, right? So there
Okay.
you can target something like sell my house fast or we buy houses or cash
Yeah.
home buyers. I wouldn't expect for your homepage to rank number 1 for that keyword because it's incredibly competitive, but
Mhm.
that at least gives you some of the like optimization keyword juice for just the homepage.
Yeah.
Um, and that brings me to the next point. Don't try to cram keywords into your URLs when you're building a national website
Oh, interesting.
because you are going to over optimize your site before you even get to the city page content. So if you have like, bradybuys.houses.com/ we buy houses Oregon and then sell my house fast Roseburg, you've already used like We Buy Houses, Sell My House Fast, or Cash Home Buyers or whatever in that URL one time. And then Google says, okay, that's what this page is about. And then it goes to, a different city or a different state even, and says, okay, well, now you're trying to target these keywords here, but now amongst these 2 pages, you've already used these keywords like 8 times. And we only want to see that keyword used 3 or 4 times. But every time you use it in the URL, it takes up one of those slots on the individual page, whether that's a state page or a city page. So if you put it in the URL and you put it in the state page and you put it in the city page, now you've used it 3 times before you can even put it in like your H1 tag. And so
Interesting.
you're like running up the keyword density count, even though it's just a URL and you're not looking up like the body copy. So instead, when you're going nationwide, just pick a brand name that doesn't necessarily include any of the 3 most popular, like Cash Home Buyers, Sell My House Fast, We Buy Houses. Pick something like, I don't know, just a random brand like
Brady Buys. That's my fictional national brand when I start going national.
Perfect. Yeah, Brady Buys. And so it's like bradybuys.com/Oregon or just OR/Roseburg. And then from there, you could optimize that city page to your heart's content, right? You can pick whatever keyword you want. You can pick, choose like the 1.5% or 2% keyword density and put it in all the right places, images, headings, text, all that stuff. And it's going to work wonders. You're not going to over optimize yourself out of that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. So in that example, hopefully I don't muddy the waters here, but in that example of trying not to keyword stuff, you were talking about for the main keyword in general, right? We sell my house fast, and not like Sell My House Fast, Roseburg, Oregon, not tied to a city. Gotta be careful not to just overuse that Sell My House Fast throughout.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. That makes sense. Are there any, I'm guessing the answer is no, but do you do your keyword research any differently versus if you're doing local SEO?
No, not really. The only things that you would do differently is kind of avoid the near me keywords because you're specifically not doing local SEO. Like your intention is to go nationwide. So you should not sort of build these internal expectations that you're going to rank for the near me keywords. You might, and in a couple places, but it would be, sheer luck. It wouldn't be like a intentional effort. So, but outside of that, you may kind of surprise yourself because some of the cities or some of the states may have keyword variations that other markets don't have. And there may be some situation keywords, like Sell My Inherited House, Florida, which may have a significantly higher volume out there than it would be in, Arizona, right? So I would say start the keyword research process still the same. Sort of broaden your horizons in terms of like what keywords to look out for, because there's going to be more variations on a nationwide site because there's certain things happening in local markets that are not happening on the other side of the country. For example, fire damage houses might be way more popular in the Pacific Northwest than they would be in the, Atlantic Northeast, for example. Flooding may be more prominent, like a water damage house may be more prominent keywords in the South or on the East Coast as opposed to in the, PNW area. That's the only thing that's like really different, is that you can't take the same keywords and then just run them on all the states, because you're missing out on some opportunities where you're going to have lower hanging fruit in different situations in different markets. And unless you have someone who's, or like, I don't know, maybe a news article comes out about a wildfire. And you're like, okay, that state and that city is probably going to have houses that need to sell and they have fire damage and they don't want to do the repairs. So that may be an opportunity to target content and, situation pages for that market, either in that state or in that city, but that's not going to apply to Texas or Florida or New Mexico, so that's the real difference, is you kind of have to keep your eyes and ears more open on a national, like news level almost.
Yeah. And also there's going to be like, for the example of fire damage homes in, Northern California or Southern Oregon, whatever, you're going to have an influx of leads, more leads than you normally would have. So there's going to be more opportunity. There's going to be more search volume for those things. So you'll be more likely to get a deal from something like that.
Right. Exactly.
So I was going to ask about backlinks, but I'll circle back around to that. Are there any other examples, like what types of content you'd be creating for a national site versus a local website, besides the things you mentioned?
Great question. So for a national site, the topics of the content are still the same, right? So you'd still want to make a dedicated page for each of the situations, like probate, forbearance, or foreclosure, inherited houses, tired landlords, hoarder houses, things like that, right? But
Mhm.
instead of assigning it to a specific location, like how to sell a probate house in Oklahoma, you would say how to sell a probate house. And from
Hmm.
there, that would link from the homepage to that page. So I'm going to include a little bit of the site structure components with the answer to this question, just so everyone can kind of create this mental map.
Yep.
So all the situation pages will not target a specific location, but they will be featured on the homepage and linked to from the homepage. So people can say, okay, I live in this state and I'm in this situation, but the internal linking is going to change once they go one level down. So you write the situation page talking about probate houses. And in that probate house list, it's also going to link to all your location pages. And then if your location page references that specific situation, it's going to link from the city or the state page back to that original probate page. So I
Okay.
wish I had like a whiteboard behind
I
me.
think I know. No, I think I'm tracking. Let me explain this. I know. I'm like, why are we choose to do this on a podcast? People are like, Brady, why are you doing a podcast with us? You should be doing a webinar, man.
Right.
um, okay, so we have at the top URL structure. We have BradyBuysHouses.com.
Mm-hmm.
This is our homepage. On that page, we're linking out to our different topics or niches. So,
Right.
how to sell your house in probate. You click on that. So now you're at BradyBuysHouses.com/sell a probate house, whatever the keyword is.
Yeah.
You click on that probate page. From there, somewhere on that page, you've got a section to all the different locations that you do business in. So in this case, your state pages.
Yep.
So say you got 48 state pages linked up. Now you click on a state page. So you're on the probate page. Then you click on one of the state pages. What's the URL of that state page?
It's the same state page it's linked to from the homepage.
Okay. It's not, and it's not, the key is it's not probate specific. You're just linking to it from that topic page.
Right.
So now you're at BradyBuysHouses.com/we buy houses in Texas.
Yes. And so, and the reason why is that you're not necessarily trying to, excuse me, you're not necessarily trying to like dive deep into how to sell a probate house in Texas, right? You are trying to get the topical relevance through internal linking that you sell probate houses and you do so in Texas, but you're not telling them how to do it. You're just saying that we can do it, if that makes
Interesting.
sense. So,
Yeah. Okay.
because there's a lot more that can go into it. Like you could create a how to sell a probate house in Texas as a standalone page, and maybe the Texas page links to that. Maybe the how to sell a probate house links to that too, right?
Yeah.
But that would be like stage 3 of the content creation, right? Where you're
Yeah.
drilling down one level deeper. Because right now, creating the state page and city pages, stage 1, and then writing all the situation pages is stage 2, right? Where you're basically establishing the topics you are an expert of on the second level, and those link to and from state pages and city pages. And then that third level would be the specific one, how to sell a probate house in Texas. And that's where you could create links to like the Texas, whatever government entities manage probates,
Yeah.
or like you could link to the probate laws in that state. And that's
Mhm.
where you can get really like localized with the content, would be on that stage 3. And
Okay.
that's when you get like the full SEO equity of having a nationwide level and the situation page, and having the third level where you're linking to local resources. Because that local resource one is likely going to be the piece of content that can generate backlinks on its own, because it's helpful on a state level for a specific topic. And so people who are talking about it, referencing it, whatever, like if your page is the go-to resource section for all of that specifically, then it's more likely to earn backlinks organically, versus like
Gotcha.
how to sell a probate house on a national level isn't going to do that. And then the state, like how to sell my house in Texas, isn't going to do that either. So it's kind of like
Gotcha.
a more advanced content subject matter. But
Yeah.
the
That's
idea
after
is
you
that
tackle a lot of the basics, a lot of the foundation.
right, right. Because you can start to crunch some numbers like, okay, if I have 48 states and 12 situations and I have to write 12 situations for 48 states, like you do the math, like, oh, that adds up real fast. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where another problem comes into, is when people start to think, I have to write content on a local level, targeting a location page, because that's what I did for my other website. And then I have to repeat that process 48 times. And then you
Yeah.
get a website that's like 3,000 URLs. None of them are ranking well, and the internal linking is all broken, and it just becomes like a big mess real fast. So
Yeah.
that's why
Okay.
it's like 48 pages and then 5 city pages for each state, right? That's already a lot.
Yeah.
Then you create one situation page that all the city and state pages reference and link back to. And then from
Yeah.
there, if you're not already ranking well, then you can drill down to that third stage and say, okay, we need to write content about selling an inherited house in West Virginia because we want West Virginia to be the state that we have the biggest presence in. We get more leads in there because maybe we have partnerships. Maybe we can sell deals to buddies or something. Or maybe that's just an area where we're getting a lot of leads right now. And we want to double down. And so
Nice.
then you can say, okay, we're going to write a blog post about that, and it's going to live here, on the West Virginia page and also on the inherited houses page. But then you kind of know like where this needs to link to, where it needs to live, and you kind of have an idea of like you don't have to do that same thing 300 times over for every situation page because that just becomes immediately overwhelming for you
Yeah.
and for Google.
You're going to have a million pages to keep track of. One thing I want to mention, we're talking about, even just with the 48 state pages, even just with that's a lot of pages to create. If it's been a while since you checked out the tools and features that Carrot has, we have auto location pages now, so you don't have to go manually all of those pages. If you want, you can use the auto location page builder. It'll basically duplicate your homepage, replace the shortcodes for that city or that state, and automatically create a page for that market. So that's a quick and easy way to make a whole bunch of pages really fast. Get your homepage dialed in, get it optimized for conversion, what I mean, and for SEO, and then duplicate it for another city or another state. So that's a quick way to do it. Backlinks real quick. So you had already mentioned how if you have the state pages, then you can basically go after the local backlinks the same way you would if you had just had a local website. What about backlinks to the homepage? Or I guess a better question might be, if you're going national, what backlinks are you going after? Like if you're gonna put some time and effort into getting a few good quality backlinks, what would those be?
So the best fallback, if you're like let's say that you reach out on Haro or you're on like featured.com or something, and they say, hey, we love your quote, we're gonna go ahead and publish it, what URL do you want? The best fallback is on your homepage for your brand name. You're never going to go wrong with that, right? That's also the easiest one to usually build backlinks to. It's just the homepage. If you get into a situation where maybe you are approved to publish a guest blog post on like a niche website talking about home decor or DIY landscaping projects or something like that, then you can pick either a state or a city page. And that's going to feel a lot more natural, especially if the topic you're writing about is relevant to that area. Like I've got a client who recently had this like brilliant epiphany because there's this rumor in Texas that you have to water your foundation. Like you have to get your foundation wet, otherwise it's going to crack and you're going to get like all these foundational crack issues. And I was like, what? That's
Wait,
so
what?
wild. Yeah.
I'm a Texas boy now living in Oregon. I can tell you this is not good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But he sort of saw the search volume there for that and was like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, let's break down this rumor and confirm whether it's true or not.
Somebody started a TikTok. It had to come. It
Right.
freaking
Yeah.
TikTok. Somebody was like, "How to water your foundation? Must critical step to maintain your."
Yeah. And like, how do you even do that? Are you just standing in your living room, like with a water hose, just spraying your carpet down? Like, I don't know how that works. Anyway, he wrote a blog post that basically like debunked this rumor. And it got a lot of traction. And then I started building some backlinks. People were like, hey, can we link to you? Because we're talking about this on like a funny news article or something like that. He was like, yeah, sure. And that was like a really brilliant way to take something that's like localized, write some content about it, and then people came to him, but you could also go to other publishers. You could go to local news channels. You could go to like niche bloggers in the area. They're not super hard to find, but if you find someone that's like real estate adjacent and they're down to let you publish a guest blog post, sometimes there may be a fee associated with it. If you've never reached out to this person before, you could incentivize them by saying like, hey, I'll pay you 50 or $100 or however much to publish this guest blog post. I think it'd be helpful for your target audience. And a lot of times they'll be open and receptive to it as long as they can read the content and maybe suggest some edits. And then you just put your backlink in there. And so you link to your location page or your state page, or even, I guess, technically a situation page if you wanted to. But that would be my recommendations for building backlinks to state or city pages, especially on a nationwide website. Like, you need to do a little bit of research, maybe start with key research first to find if there's any like situations that may be more common or something that's more seasonal, like maybe learning how to weatherproof a certain type of house during hurricane season or tornado season or wildfire season, right?
Yeah.
So like different areas of the country are going to have these different situations, and you could write content about it when you're getting close to that season, and then reach out to local publishers, bloggers, niche website owners that specifically talk about DIY crafting projects, and be like, hey, this is a cool one that you can do. You can make a wind sock that'll let you know where the wind is blowing during storm seasons. So you kind of, it's a fun way to blah, blah, blah. And then you link to your city page on your national investor website. And so it's kind of stuff like that where you're going to get more success going that approach than getting on Fiverr and being like, hey, like build a bunch of backlinks for me and like blast, 100 of them on this city page and 100 of them on that city page, 100, because that might work in the short term, but it's not a long-term solution, and it's not going to bring any kind of relevancy to your site. And the websites or the backlinks are going to be as valuable in the long run than if they are with something that's actually bringing you like organic click-through traffic. Like, they read the blog, they click the link, they come to your site, because you can get backlinks from anywhere. If they're not getting traffic and the traffic's not clicking through to you, it's even less valuable as a backlink. Versus like if you spend the time to pitch on like Haro or Featured, and you get a reporter and you answer like a legitimate question, then people reading those articles will actually click through to your website to see kind of like what you do. But those are typically best suited for the homepage because they're going to be higher DR or higher DA or a higher authority score. And it's just going to be a better fit to reach out to either like the About Us or Our Company page or the homepage, typically is what they'll do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for giving that context there. And we already know that one high quality relevant backlink is going to be more valuable than, 25, 50, irrelevant backlinks.
Right.
Okay. So that's good, man. Yeah. That whole thing on like, do I need to water my foundation just blows me away. But it opens up my brain to like a whole world of possibilities for like creative or funny content. Like, what other myths are out there? What other questions are people searching that are just obscure that you wouldn't have thought of because frankly nobody's doing them, or they're outside the quote unquote like normal scope of content you should write for SEO.
Yeah. And really, when you have a national website, you shouldn't be like so zoomed in on building backlinks to a specific city page, right? Because you're talking about one city out of probably 300 plus on your website.
Mm-hmm.
What you could do instead is go for a 10,000 foot view and say like, how do I get more organic traffic to my site? And there's a lot of different ways you could do that. Whether through doing like evergreen marketing, like writing blog posts or YouTube videos or podcasts. But there's some other areas where it's a lot more like covert and the barrier for entry is significantly smaller. So underutilized social media accounts like Pinterest or Reddit, those two are among the most valuable social media channels for real estate investors, because not many people are doing it, but they actually pass on SEO equity to your website. So you'll get a no follow backlink from Pinterest, and you can put links to your website on Reddit. So if you build an account and you spend time in Reddit threads, actually answering questions, providing value to people, helping people on Reddit, and then like I'd say 1 out of every 10 posts that you do on Reddit, drop a link to your website. And you can pick wherever you want. Like if the topic is super specific, like let's say someone's like really distraught, they inherited a house, it's about to, they can't afford the mortgage payments or whatever. You can hop in and say, hey, like here's a couple of options for you to do. Let me know a little more about your situation and I can help you kind of navigate through this. But conversational. Don't prompt them for contact info. Don't pitch them anything. Don't link your site in that first post. And then just have that conversation with them. Go down the thread a little bit. And then once, on average, 1 out of 10, just be like, hey, if you want more information about this situation specifically, here's a link to my website where I talk about it in depth. And that's all it takes. And then boom, you got a backlink from Reddit. And then people that are actually reading that thread are going to go through that backlink and turn into organic traffic on the website. And then your website gets more user metrics. And we now know from the Google API leak that happened months and months ago
Mm-hmm.
that user metrics are a pretty big considering factor for ranking. So
Yeah.
the better your user metrics are, the more time people spend on your site, the more pages they click on, the more likely you are to rank for higher keywords. And so
Yeah.
if that performs well and it's targeted to a state, then maybe other states rise with it, right? So because the
Yeah.
user metrics are not necessarily only looked at on a page or like state level. It could be domain wide, right? So Google could be looking at it and say, hey, this website as a whole gets 1,200 clicks a month. People spend more than 6 minutes at a time per session on this website. So the content they are providing is helpful. People are reading it. So we're going to rank this whole website higher, even if it's on state or local markets. And so Pinterest, another great example, right? You're not going to get multiple backlinks from every pin, but you don't need a login in order to see content on Pinterest, which
Right.
means it's not blocking Google crawlers from being able to figure out everything that Pinterest has to offer. So
Mm-hmm.
if you make a real estate investor Pinterest account and you have different boards that talk about selling an inherited house or what to do in foreclosure, things like that, and then inside those boards you create pins and you also grab other people's pins and put them on that board, you're creating a full picture that has more context about the content you're writing and talking about. And then within
Mm-hmm.
that pin, you link back to your specific article or your specific city page or your specific state page,
Yeah.
and then on your main profile, the link goes to your homepage. So then, and I learned this initially when I launched my sushi website. Now I
Mm-hmm.
know people out there kind of like, well, sushi's different. It's already very aesthetically pleasing. It makes sense because Pinterest is like a mecca of like recipes, right? And food
Yeah.
bloggers and stuff. But this can work for real estate investors. I've got a couple clients right now who are testing this out. I don't have the data to back it up yet, but I've got a pretty good feeling about it just based on how it works in other industries because it's very much visual and it's very much like collecting information to reference later, right? And so when people get into that kind of mindset, they're not as critical about the quality of information or anything like that. So you could get away with not having super high quality polished stuff, but if you're talking about a specific situation and like really speaking to your target audience about solving that problem, they're
Yeah.
not going to think twice about just throwing it on their board, their collection, right? And then
Yeah.
they may read it later. But the more times someone repins, is what they call it, they repin something onto their board, your
Mm-hmm.
Pinterest account gets more visibility on the Pinterest search engine because it is its own search engine.
Yeah.
And so the more that happens, the more your pin shows up for different things, the more people click on it, pin it, the more they click through your website, read your article, and then like it very quickly snowballs. So for my sushi site,
Yeah.
Pinterest was my number 2 highest referring traffic source, only
Holy.
seconded by YouTube.
I was gonna say YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube is pretty much always number 1, right? But in order to make YouTube videos that get people to click to your website, it's got to be high quality. It's got to
Right.
be really authoritative content. You can't
Yeah.
just start making YouTube videos and expect that to bring traffic to your site because it doesn't work.
Which is which you're spot on, and it's so interesting. I never thought about Pinterest that way. Like me, you, Mallory, we've talked about this Pinterest experiment. Like, oh, is it going to work? Like, I don't know. We'll see. But I hadn't considered that the bar on content that is linked out to from Pinterest is pretty low. The
Yeah,
bar's low,
right.
and like as long as you have that really aesthetically pleasing, like wow image, usually the blog post is linked out to is like, that's pretty lackluster. It's pretty basic.
Right.
It's almost an excuse for the pin.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Pinterest has different keywords, it's a totally separate search engine than Google. And so you may find some insights on Pinterest that you may not have found doing key research outside of Pinterest,
Yeah.
especially
So
for things that are seasonal.
yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna. We talked about a lot, so I'll just recap that for people listening real quick. The Reddit strategy and the Pinterest. The Reddit strategy we've seen, like as marketers, we've seen that for years. It works
Right.
really well just to get people to your website. Like tried and true strategy to get more traffic to your site. I hadn't thought about it from an SEO's perspective, but what Bryan's saying is these strategies where you're actually engaging, adding value in specific conversations. Let's say you're monitoring all these different conversations and forums or Reddit, Pinterest, etc. Really Reddit and Pinterest because they're not locked behind the login like a forum would be
Right.
necessarily. Which I think even bigger pockets in this case, maybe because bigger pockets
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
searchable. So anyways, you're engaging in these and let's say you're plugging your link 1 out of every 10 times, when it's not spammy, when it's actually going to help someone, they're looking for that answer, you plug it, it's a no follow backlink. So the link in itself is not giving you SEO juice that a lot of other backlinks would, but at scale, you're getting more people to come to your page, which Bryan mentioned from the Google leak, more people clicking through to your page and more time on page is telling Google, this is a helpful website. This is a helpful
Right.
content. We should rank it higher because more people come to it. So hopefully that all makes sense. It's making sense to me.
Yeah. And for people who are newer starting out, like say you want to start a nationwide website, you're not really sure how to do it other than just the actual on-site stuff. Like marketing the site is just as important as building the site out in the first place. But if you had to pick between building a bunch of backlinks right out of the gate or building a bunch of Pinterest pins or jumping into Reddit, I would actually do the Reddit and Pinterest stuff first because those user metrics are going to make it more likely for you to rank for keywords that don't require backlinks. Because we've seen a lot of
Oh, interesting.
examples. I say we, like my agency has seen a lot of examples of websites that don't have a crazy impressive backlink profile that are outranking Carrot members that do. And so the only thing we can think about that is causing that is the actual user metrics. And user metrics can be influenced by marketing channels outside of SEO. So like if you have your PPC campaign pointing to your website and it's on a page, it's not like a dedicated landing page, it's no follow, no index. Those user metrics and people that click on your ads adds to the SEO. It's like
Yeah.
a residual side effect type situation,
Right.
but things like bandit signs, direct mail, TV ads, billboards, anytime someone clicks on your site, Google is recording the user metrics. And those
Yeah.
user metrics in aggregate help your SEO. But to say that like running a TV ad is going to help your SEO, it's not a direct one-to-one benefit. It's like
Right.
a side tangent sort of thing, you know? But the more you do that kind of stuff, the more user metrics you get on your website as a whole, the easier it's going to rank. Because that was years and years ago how it was meant to be, right? You market
Yeah.
in more of a holistic approach, you know, by using word of mouth and business cards and billboards and TV ads and radio and all that stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
people search you, they search your brand name, they find your website, and they you know continue down the buyer journey that way. Versus now everything's so much more digital and we're tracking everything. So it kind of splintered a little bit. And some people think, okay, well, PPC doesn't help SEO, or maybe my direct mailers aren't helping SEO at all. But all marketing efforts work together to boost each other. And then SEO as in general rises up with all of it, but only because we now can confirm that user metrics is the driving point.
Right. That's interesting. And like Trevor and I were recording a podcast a few days ago about a study we did. We put out a blog post. We did a study where we looked at top ranking carrot sites across different markets in the US. And there were some anomalies that we found that matches what you're saying, where it was like surprisingly low backlinks.
Mm-hmm.
There was even one in Roseburg that was ranking. Roseburg is a super small market, but 4 backlinks. And I'm like, shoot, even for a small market, like 4 backlinks, that's almost nothing. That's crazy. But we saw, I can't remember, I'm not looking at the spreadsheet, but I think it was Dallas. There was like a really large market with pretty low backlinks, and they were ranking in the top 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting stuff, man. Well, we're about at time. This has been super valuable. I don't want to give people any more. I feel like we're on the verge of overwhelm if they haven't already, you know. Hopefully you guys have been keeping up with us. This has been super insightful. Let's do this, man. We've talked about pretty much everything under the sun as far as how to rank nationally. Just to kind of put a bow on it, what are the top 3 things? Like say someone started their national website, what are the 3 things they need to focus on at a high level?
I think the first thing is just making sure that your site structure makes sense, right? Your homepage links to your state pages. Your state pages link to your city pages. And you should try to build out all the states and all the cities as fast as you can. The best way is with auto location pages, right? It's a brilliant tool. It's designed to do something almost exactly like this, where you can say, okay, this is my state page template. This is my city page template. And then boom, 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 boom. You just go through the whole list. The second thing I think would be to start looking at online directories, not local directories, not one that's like, you know, Chamber of Commerce, Oklahoma City, but I'm talking about things where you can list your business online through things like Yelp or Yellow Pages, or just getting like social media accounts for that national level as soon as possible, right? Because those count as citations, those count as signals of authority for your website. And it doesn't take super long to do it. I'm not saying you have to be active on every social media channel. You don't have to have, like a super built out Zillow account or something like that. But it's good to have those accounts to, one, preserve a brand name, and two, just to get a link, a citation link to your site. And then the third thing would be start working on doing some user metric generation, like whether that's Reddit or Pinterest or social media. Try to get more people clicking through to your website, because that early stage organic signals is going to do more for you than like an early stage really authoritative backlink,
Yeah.
because the authoritative backlink is going to seem a little bit more suspicious coming from a brand new site. And then if I had to add one more thing to that, it wouldn't even be to build out the backlinks. It would be to start building out those situation pages, just the stage 2 pages where you're talking about the topic in general and you're not targeting it towards a specific location.
Yeah.
But that lets Google know that you talk about the topic, and you can even use the carrot tool, the niche authority builder. It's great for this, right? So like how to sell an inherited house, you publish that page, it links to the homepage, and it comes with 5 blog posts or sometimes more that already links to that pillar post, the pillar page. Get a couple of those on there, because that gives Google some context about the topics that you talk about and are an expert in the 48 states and in all the hundreds of city pages.
Yeah.
And that would be kind of the order of operation that I'd recommend getting into.
That's good, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's the best way we can kind of simplify it, which, we're talking about something like trying to rank nationally. It's a
Yeah,
big ordeal, it's not something you're going to just like casually do on the side, but I'm encouraged by this conversation because it can be done, and there are creative ways to go about it that a lot of people probably aren't thinking of. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And then one little tip I want to throw out there. Previously, I think it was like back in March, no one really knew why Reddit threads were showing up in search results for seemingly random keywords. But because of the Google antitrust lawsuit that happened earlier, I think it was early this week or last week,
Yeah.
we now know that Google actually pays Reddit to get access to their API. So previously, Google couldn't access the information on an efficient level, but now they can, and they're paying a substantial amount of money to have that privilege to do it. So that's why you're seeing Reddit threads appear as like the number 2 or 3 position for keywords that previously no one would think to go to Reddit for. And it's because Google's paying for it and they want to use it. So with that information in mind, go get on Reddit and use
Yeah.
that as an opportunity to rank higher and beat your competition, even on a local level, national level, whatever. Like Google's
Yeah.
using Reddit data. And so if you're not on Reddit, you probably should be. And yesterday would have been a better time to get on it than today.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I started to dive down that the Google antitrust lawsuit rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, I need to set aside some time for this. Like I need to,
Yeah.
maybe that's a conversation we should have pretty soon. Cool, man. All right. Where can people find you? What are you doing, and where can people connect with you?
Yeah. People can find me on the Carrot Marketplace. So if they have any interest in having me work on their personal website for SEO, that's where I would check first. So my business is called Fox and Owl Marketing. And so you can find me in the Carrot Marketplace, or you can just find me on social media.
Sweet. I love that. I love that business name, by the way, Fox and Owl Marketing. I love the
Thank you.
logo too. Yeah. All right. Find them in the Carrot Marketplace, marketplace.carrot.com. Hopefully you got value out of this. If you did, do us a favor, leave us a podcast review on Apple Podcasts or leave a comment on the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us reach more people. So thanks everybody for listening in. And Bryan, thanks for hopping on, man. It's been a good conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Brady. It's always a pleasure.
All right. We'll see you later.